はい、皆様どうも聞こえておりますでしょうか。ここからの司会進行は私、平良担当させていただきます。よろしくお願いします。続いてのタイトル、ゲームタイトルではなくタイトルは、Take This Panel 2021年のセルフケアとなっております。ゲームじゃないんですね。じゃあ何なんだよというふうに思われる方、いらっしゃるかと思います。今回ですね、イベント、再配信させていただいているイベント、スピードランズラグナロク2021の寄付先の Take This。そちらはゲームコミュニティにおけるメンタルヘルスに関する意識向上、教育、奉仕活動を目的とした非営利慈善団体なんですけれども、そちらに関連してね、いろいろお話を聞いていくことになります。しかしですね、悲しいことにね、私は英語がさっぱりですね。なので、できる範囲でいろいろ皆さんとお話しするなりなんなりできたらなというふうに思っておりますが、よろしくお願いいたします。じゃあここで、改めましてね、今回のイベントの概要の方を説明していきたいと思います。現在、ジャパニーズリストリームでは RTA イベント、スピードランラグナロク2021の様子を公認で日本語ミラー配信しています。スピードランラグナロク2021は The RPG Valkyries の Twitch チャンネルで行われるテイクリスを支援するためのオンラインチャリティ RT イベントです。The RPG Valkyries は RPG やスピードランニングが大好きな女性や女性寄りのランナーが集まったグループで、自分たちのスキルやゲームへの愛をアピールするために作られました。The RPG Valkyries のチャンネルでは年間通して複数のイベントが配信されるようです。そして、先ほども言いましたように、今回のイベントの寄付先である Take This は、ゲームコミュニティにおけるメンタルヘルスに関する意識向上、教育、奉仕活動を目的とした非営利の慈善団体です。寄付と関連して特定のゲームには高難易度への変更やエンディングの選択等予定されており、各項目前に設定された目標寄付金額を達成した際に行われます。また寄付金額を表に満たしたビットによってキャラクター名や選択肢など決定されることもあります。寄付額に対する報酬は URL がご確認いただけますので、URL 流しますね。はい、こちらですね。こちらのインセンティブ詳細がわかりますのでよろしくお願いいたします。直接の寄付はカードによってはできないこともどうしてもあるんですけれども、ぜひ一度チャレンジしていただけたらと思います。イベントは明日です。明日の朝頃までですね。まで24時間、昼夜問わず開催されておりますので、最後までお楽しみください。そうです。あと1日ちょいで、このイベント終わってしまいます。悲しいね。ぜひぜひ最後まで十分に体調にはお気をつけて楽しんでいただけたらと思います。泣かないで。泣かないで。もう明日の今頃の時間にはですね、画面左端の今後のゲームにですね、もう終わりが見えてしまうんですね。終わりのフィナーレが見えています。悲しいね。 まあ、そんな中でもね、最後まで楽しんでいきましょう。フィナーレがどんなゲームなのかもお楽しみにね。今、スピードランラグナロク2021の方を配信させていただいておりますけれども、また11月にですね、違う別のイベントの方も未来配信すでに決定しております。もう告知もされてるかと思いますが、こちらもね、お楽しみにという感じです。残り1日今日となりましたイベントですが、解説者の方がまだまだ募集中のタイトルありますので、よろしくお願いいたします。本日はリンク The Faces of Evil ニュートピアウルティマ6ランダマイザー、シコリかなあと、ゼルダの伝説のランダマイザースーパーマリオワールドリミックスが本日中のイベント中に行われるタイトルで、まだ解説の方が応募がないタイトルですね。若干ないとも知識がありますよという感じでも構いませんので、解説応募していただけると大変助かります。そうだな。まだ始まんなそうですかね。始まった。
I think we're on the internet. Okay. But if we whisper, they can't hear us. I think. Hold on. If we do this right, if I bring this down real
右は
low,
貝白さんです
can we
ね。
call this Dr. BSMR?
Yeah.
今回のイベントで別にあったテイクリスパネルの方で、こちらの配信の
Or what we're gonna
解説の
what
ボイスチャット
we're
の方
gonna
来ていた
do
だいていろい
is
ろお
we're just
話
gonna
しして
keep
いた
it
だい
down
た
low
りし
like
まし
this
た。
and just do like it's an NPR show. Hi, this is Dr. B subbing in for whoever was supposed to be here. And we're going to be talking about our favorite legumes.
My favorite legume is a peanut. There, gotcha.
My favorite legumes. Welcome in, everybody. Well, I'm here with Dr. B today to talk about legumes and how to take care of them and yourself.
Yes. And we're calling this To Bean or Not To Bean.
Oh, no. Dr. B, I'm supposed to be the interview host here. You're going to be... I'd be awful on television. Oh boy.
いいな、元気そうで。
Well,
元気が一番ですよ。
Well, Dr. B, let's start off with, I know that you probably introduced yourself a couple days ago, but let's have you reintroduce yourself. Tell us why you are qualified to talk to us about legumes, and
yes.
And maybe even a little bit about your role in Take This.
Yes. Well, my name is Dr. B, and what people don't realize is that's short for bean. Now, I had to go by an abbreviated version due to the constant mistakes people made with the British comedy character, Mr. Bean. Now, I insisted I am, in fact, Dr. Bean, and that's totally different, but hi. Somebody's gonna actually take me seriously for that, and no, we can't do that. So I am
猫ちゃんですね。
So I'm Rafael Bocamazzo, better known as just Dr. B for long Italian name reasons, and I am a non-practicing doctor of clinical psychology, and for nearly 6 years I have been the clinical director at Take This, which is a mental health nonprofit that is dedicated to educating and providing resources for mental wellness, both in the game community and the game industry. And at the time of our founding, in 2012, we were the only mental health nonprofit serving the game industry, and I'm happy to say that more have sprung up at this point. But I just do a lot of education and a lot of public speaking and workshops and writing, and probably what we're best known for is our AFK rooms at various conventions when conventions happen in person. Last year and a half has been kind of slow for that. But yeah, other than that, I am actually an expert on and I'm not joking, I'm being completely serious on this. I am an expert on the applied use of tabletop role-playing games in clinical and learning settings. A lot of people think I'm making that up when I say it, but I am in fact not.
Yeah, Dr. B also has a lovely, if you do tabletop games, Dr. B has a lovely adventure that he has written called, is it Gardens of Fog?
Oh, Gardens of Fog, yes. I co-wrote it. I don't want to take credit where I haven't earned it.
現在、行われておりますテイクディスパネルですが、また内容が少し違った形のものがですね、今までのイベントの中で2回行われておりまして、これは3回目となっております。他の2回の内容が気になるという方は、アーカイブの方を参照いただければと思います。
To take this, so it's called Gardens of Fog. Yeah. Oh, yes, and also, also within that, we introduced a new subclass for clerics based on Take This's mascot, the Psychomancer.
Oh.
The Psychomancer. They're very fun to play.
Yeah. Psychomancer. Yeah, and we have someone in chat mentioning that you do some really chill streams.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. B does some chill streams. I've popped in from time to time.
I've taken a little bit of a hiatus for the last 2 weeks simply because I had two really huge professional exams, two really huge professional exams that I've been studying for months and months and months. Incredibly stressful. I'm happy to say I passed both of them.
Yeah.
So while I am not currently an independently practicing clinical psychologist, I will be soon.
Super exciting.
Yes. So, so I'm pretty pumped about all that. So we're gonna be coming back to doing that chill stream a couple times a week, either this weekend or next week.
Yeah, and then also on Mondays, you and Dr. Kelly play video games on Take This's stream.
Yes, we alternate. On most Mondays, there is some Take This stream that is going on. Now, whether it's our boss, Yves Crevichet, who's the executive director, having a fantastically educational conversation with some folks in the game industry, whether it is our awesome and charismatic research director, Dr. Rachel Cowart, who's having a talk about mental health in video games, or whether it is Dr. Kelly Dunlap and myself, me annoying the absolute crap out of her with dad jokes, of which I seem to have an infinite supply. What's that?
I said your dad jokes are great.
I've got one.
I'm ready.
Yeah, okay, so the soprano says to the alto, got a joke, want to hear it? The alto says, sure. The soprano says, melody. The alto says, I don't get it. The soprano says, I know you don't.
Oh boy. But I can, and of course, I think you can find these. I don't know if if you have like a team of people who highlight the videos and stuff. But I have dropped in and seen Dr. B and Kelly playing some great games. I think it's like a Dr. B plays and Kelly recommends. I don't know if you ever switch.
Yeah, so Dr. Dunlap, I really have to say Dr. Dunlap is probably the most qualified person in the world to comment on mental health representation in games. Not only is she a practicing clinical psychologist, but after she got her doctorate in clinical psychology, she decided, no, that's not enough school for me. She went back and got an additional master's degree in game design. So she is not only a practicing clinical psychologist, she's not only a researcher.
Doesn't she?
What's that?
I said she teaches too, doesn't she?
She teaches video games and psychology and game design. And she researches this. And she has been a community manager for a decade, and she was a semi-pro Halo player. So Dr. Dunlap is the most qualified person in the world to tell me why I'm playing what I'm playing, at which point I throw ridiculousness at her.
Yeah, and I think I had the fortune of, and this actually spurred me to start playing it again. And I want to actually go back and like once I played through it, watch your playthrough. But you were playing Nights in the Woods.
Yes.
And I was really enjoying watching that. And so basically, to give you all some context, so Dr. B and Dr. Dunlap will play these games. Dr. B is steering the wheel, so to speak. And then they'll take these interludes to talk about what's happening in the story and what's, from a kind of psychological standpoint and mental health standpoint, and really kind of dig in deep. So it's really beautiful to see that from, a professional standpoint. I really enjoy the streams that you can see on the Take This Twitch channel.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, and in addition to that, because I don't do enough. In addition to that, every week on Tuesdays at noon Pacific, you can find me over at Codename Entertainment's channel on Twitch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where we have a weekly talk show on mental health called Champions of Psychology. And I'm happy to say the award-winning mental health talk show, Champions of Psychology. We were some of the community honorees in the TTRP GIF Golden GIF Award. I totally butchered the name, and Robo has every right to chastise me for that. Golden TTRP GIF Awards.
Nice, that's great. All right, well, speaking of rewards,
Did we do it?
Yeah, we totally did, and I wanted to, and actually we're almost really close, but I wanted to give everybody the reward of the unboxing before we start digging into self-care in 2021. So, Dr. B, go ahead.
Oh my goodness.
Dr. B's so excited, it's great.
Okay, what you need to know for context is I love Gurin Brothers hats. Okay, love them. I have visited almost every store in North America, even before they closed a bunch of them for the pandemic. And I get hats. I buy hats to commemorate major life milestones. And I specifically got this hat to celebrate passing the clinical psychologist licensure exam. And it's appropriate because I realized I could drink a little less coffee now that they came out with a coffee swirl hat. Oh my God, that's gorgeous. Oh, look at that.
お、
That's
帽
so
子です
pretty.
ね。
I love it.
Oh,
後ろにもいっぱい帽
look
子
at
がか
that
かってます
swirl
ね。
pattern. Oh, that is pretty. Oh, I gotta put it on. Oh, I gotta definitely put it on. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, I love this hat. Okay. There we go.
This is, look at this dapper gentleman.
Yep. I said it, but see, now we joked about this, and I'm going to start a band based on this look. And previously, I was going to go with like an Appalachian punk band, but now I don't know. I mean, my usual go-to joke is my Wallflowers cover band, 6th Avenue Heartache, but oh gosh. Let's see here. Am I starting where this ensemble?
Love it. It's a really nice hat. Dr. B, so let's jump into self-care. And I guess let me ask this question. Is you buying these hats to kind of celebrate these major life achievements, is this one of like a form of self-care for you?
I think so. I think so. And before we jump into that, let me take an opportunity to do two things.
Okay.
One is to say that as I answer questions, and I will answer some questions from the community, I need to preface it with the idea that while I am clinically trained, and I will probably soon be seeing clients again, I cannot give any direct personalized advice to folks. Now, I can talk in generalities about self-care. I can talk about common practices around self-care. However, I can't give individualized advice beyond telling folks that go consult with a licensed provider in your area. That's the only direct advice I can really give. Now, that's the first part. The second part is the idea of self-care. Now, we live in a society at this point that has learned to commodify self-care. And a lot of folks are going to, when we see advertisements for forms of self-care, it's often conflated with things like luxury experiences, pampering, that sort of things. My hat collections, it's not a necessity. It's absolutely not a necessity. It's a luxury that I am able to provide for myself, which I'm very fortunate to be able to do, but it's not a necessity. And self-care is anything we do. Now we've already talked about Dr. Kelly Dunlap, and I want to bring up a definition that she uses that I absolutely love. And there's a difference between maintenance self-care and restorative self-care. And in either of those cases, self-care isn't always pretty.
あ、なるほど。
Self-care isn't
ありがとう
always
ございま
fun.
す。なるほどね。
Self-care isn't always
現在やっ
luxurious
てい
or
る Take
expensive.
This パネル
Sometimes it's
は、
hard.
今年または来年に向けての自分のセルフケアはもっと良くしていくためにどうすればいいか、何をすればいいかっていうのをお話しいただいているみたい
But
で
it's stuff
す。
that keeps you going.
で、その中で、
And that's an important framework,
ド
I
クター
think, for
B、
all of
左
us
の
to
方かな
have
に、
as we're having a
セルフケ
conversation
アとは何な
around
のか、セル
self-care,
フケ
what
ア
it
の
is
経
and
由
what it
で、
isn't.
思い浮
Sure,
かんでき
you
た
know,
質問
we've all seen
なん
that
かを
joke, heard that joke, especially for those of you who are Parks and Rec
に
fans of,
答えて
treat
いただい
yourself.
ている時間みたいですね、今。 で、
Sure,
その質
that
問に関しては、このジャ
luxuries
パニーズリストリーム
can
か
be a
ら
form of
来る
self-care.
ことができてい
They
て、
can be,
ディスコードのア
but
ナウン
they
ス
are
メン
not
ト
intrinsically.
に
In fact,
その
some
旨記
people
載されておりま
even
す。
engage in shopping as a way of avoidance. So, but for me, the reason now that I've laid all that foundational stuff, I'll get to actually answering your question. For me, my hats become a form of self-care because I can look at them as a physical reminder of something, a physical touchstone, something I've accomplished. Because for a lot of us, and I'm no exception to this, it's very difficult to fight our own brain gremlins just by throwing in other thoughts to things. That's a difficult thing to do. If my brain's kind of being a jerk and lying to me and telling me I've never done anything worth anything, or I'm just useless, and why even bother with things today? Because chronic depression is something I do struggle with. Instead of me trying to think my way out of it, I have physical reminders of things. So I can look at this hat and say, I passed my licensure exam, which was one of the most stressful experiences of my life. And I did that. So the hats themselves are simply a vehicle for the self-care. The self-care is the reminder of my own worth in this case.
That's, well, how do I even explain that? That's really deep. That doesn't really, I don't think that gives it justice, but that is a really nice way to kind of help us remember, like, for example, if you do purchase a lot of things as a form of self-care, to remember why you're making that purchase and making sure that you are making it for like a good reason, right? Like purchasing tools for your hobby.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, and again, it's the thought process behind those purchases is going to be an important thing. Are you doing, there's the similar behaviors can come from different thought processes. Like there's a really significant difference between avoidance and distraction. But the outward behaviors can look the same. Like, I mean, for anybody who's wondering, like distraction is going, I'm overwhelmed, I can't handle this right now. I'll be able to handle it later. I just need a break. Whereas avoidance is like sticking your finger in your ears and going, la, 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 I can't do this, la, 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 I can't do this. But the outward behavior may look the same. And it's the same thing with, purchasing luxury products or services as a form of self-care. It's one thing if it's actually restorative, so you can do the things you need to do. It's another thing if it's avoiding pain and continuing to avoid pain.
Yeah.
And so that thought process is really important in how we do self-care.
So let's explain to me like I'm 5. What is self-care?
Self-care is anything you do to keep yourself healthy.
I'm taking notes so I can translate for the Japanese restream later. Awesome. So, right, like Dr. B was saying with the physical reminders of, milestones in his life. I wanted to pull in some of the questions that we have because we do have some questions that I feel like we can really kind of touch on in regards to like self-care and how we can best, identify a good way, like what we're doing, and is this like a ideal, or am I coming at this the wrong way, or is this self-care or not? So anything we do to keep ourselves healthy. And we have a question, and I gathered both questions from the Japanese Restream community, but also from Twitter and everything. So we have a
今
question
か
that
ら貼り
basically
ますね、URL。そ
says
ちらの
that
方に
lie
入
awake
れていただ
awake
ける
at
と、も
night
しかしたら
thinking
答
about
えてい
the
ただ
past
け
and
る
the
かもし
future
れない
and
です。もう
what
始まっちゃ
Should
って
I
るか
ask
ら
this
受け
question?
付けてないかもなんですけど、リンク
you
は
might
機能
have.
してるの
This
で、
sounds like
You
me.
一応貼
yeah,
り
you
ま
got
すね。
really good at Japanese because they
Oh,
asked in
okay.
Japanese too.
はい、
But
こちらか
yeah,
ら
it's like
質問はよろし
what
くお願いいた
suggestions
し
do you
ま
have
す。
for people like this who are really just
本気
trying to
に
get to
直
sleep
接
but
届きま
can't
す。
get their mind to be quiet? Is there a way that we can take care of ourselves with self-care to kind of, like you said, maintenance and restorative?
Yeah. Well, like I said at the top of this, I can't give any individualized advice about what you should or should not do. Now, what I will say is that there is, as far as I know, there's no one answer for this, because the reason we ruminate on things or get in thought loops is it's very different from person to person.
Right.
I'm very public about I'm autistic, and I will very frequently get into these thought loops, hyper focusing on certain things. And so the way I get out of those things is very different from the way somebody else would get out of those things. And so if you find yourself really struggling with something like that, I would suggest that you go out and consult with a licensed mental health provider in your area or a licensed medical provider, because they will be able to address the specific answers that lead to helping yourself, because again, why you might lay awake at night is very different than the reasons I do.
Right.
And I do. But that all being said, I know that I think it's the American Sleep Institute has some really good tips on physical factors to help with sleep. Some of them include a good sleep routine, going to bed at the same time every night, avoiding artificial light while you're in bed, so your body can start producing the melatonin it needs to get into a sleep cycle. Regular physical exercise, but not too close to when bedtime is. Lowering the temperature of your room to between, I believe it's 65 and about 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is 18 degrees Celsius. I don't know. The U.S. uses a system that doesn't make sense, so sorry if that got lost in translation. Okay. We just got word from producers that none of you, the disembodied voice that none of you could hear. But yeah,
Definitely not Natara.
But yeah, so there are some common tips that are recommended for good sleep hygiene. But for individualized solutions, yeah, always go to an individual provider. Yeah. I personally keep my room way colder than 65/18. Yeah. I think I keep mine about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I think it's about 40.
I would freeze. I think it was 29 degrees yesterday. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it was quite warm yesterday. And
wait, 29 Celsius?
Yeah. In Ohio. Yeah, I agree. That was how I felt last week. It was quite cool, and then suddenly it was hot again.
In October?
In October, normal Ohio things. Ohio is a state where you can see all three seasons in the same week. Sometimes in the same day.
God.
Yeah, but yeah, I've already broken out my heated blanket. Even though it was quite warm yesterday, when it gets cold, I can't sleep. All right, so I want to grab
some. About 85 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way.
Yeah, 29. Yeah, quite warm. Quite warm. So I just want to grab some questions that we're having in chat. Are there any telltale markers of participating in like avoidance behaviors?
That's going to be a kind of why you're
Individual
doing it, in my
Yeah.
mind. The behaviors can look the same, and it's a question of why you're doing that. If you're really concerned, if you're engaged in avoidant behaviors, that's a really good thing to talk to a mental health professional about.
Yeah.
And I'll give an example. For me, video games are a fantastic way of just sort of zoning out for a little bit, taking a breather, if I'm stressed out, and sort of taking a break until I'm good, and then I can go take care of the thing that was causing the stress in the first place. But there are definitely people who will get into that game and not take that break to go take care of the original stressor because they don't think they can handle it on some level. Maybe they're not strong, maybe they don't think they're strong enough, maybe they don't think they're capable enough, maybe it's just too much. There's a lot of underlying reasons for people avoiding, but again, the outward behavior can look the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's the difference of playing Skyrim for a couple of hours, like even a couple hours a week, or playing Skyrim, and that's all you do. You just eat, sleep, work, Skyrim.
You're talking about my vacations now.
Oh, sorry. I keep calling you out like this.
Well, that's also an important designation there. I mean, I know I really only play single player RPGs like that when I know I have enough time to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly my vacations.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, all right, peace out. I'm staying at home. I'm on the couch for a week, and I'm playing an RPG everybody else loves, but I haven't played yet.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna finish it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have. Has anybody actually finished Skyrim?
Yes. How many times?
But I think it's definitely the difference of like that's what you kind of base your everyday around. Whereas like like that's it. That's all I do. I go to work. I get my food. I open Skyrim. I eat. Maybe I take a shower once a week, and then go to sleep. Go back to work.
Yeah. Well, if you're finding any behavior, and this isn't to say it's necessarily an avoidant behavior, but it's an impactful behavior. If whatever behavior you're engaged in is impacting your ability to function in a way you expect, then that's definitely something to consult a mental health professional about, because whatever's going on, it's getting in the way of your ability to function.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Beyond your impressive hat collection.
This is the small wall.
I feel like, do you have more bow ties or more hats?
Oh, more hats. That's not even a question. There are 20 hats in the hallway. The summer hats are put away.
Fair.
And that's just the brimmed hats. I've also got my more silly hats somewhere around, like the raccoon bandit trucker.
That's cute, though. Come on.
The fezzes are lying around as well.
I love it.
There is, of course, I can always pull a tiara from the tiara space.
Oh, that is lovely.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I've
tiara.
got a pocket dimension where tiaras appear.
It's beautiful. I was going to put on a hat, and then I got self-conscious because I was like, oh no, Dr. B's got all of those cute, wonderful hats, and here's me with my one really nice hat that I got from my friend in Japan, and some other ones that are like falling apart because I love them so much.
This is not a competition. Hats should bring people joy. This is not a who can look better.
Let me actually continue with this question. What are some other forms of self-care that you yourself identify and use?
Oh,
keeping in mind, everybody, that Dr. B's self-care is not necessarily going to be the best self-care for you.
Running. I hate doing cardio. I love the effects. I mean, and this is one of those examples of self-care is not always glamorous.
Right.
And I really, you know, whenever I'm doing any sort of cardio exercise, oh, I'm getting, okay, the tiara needs to stay on. Okay, I get it. The chat has spoken. The tiara needs to stay.
Wait, chat, wait, hold on, Dr. B, hold on. Chat,
I didn't do anything.
How much is that tiara worth to you?
Oh.
How about this? If we hit 9,500, Dr. B wears the tiara.
I will do that. For $87 from viewers like you, you can make a tiara be pulled from the Tiara Pocket universe.
Nice. Yeah, so running.
Yeah, running.
Self-care's not glamorous all the time.
Yeah, this is, it's an example of how self-care is really not glamorous. Because here I'm doing like doing these interval runs where I'm just trying to do quarter miles as quickly as I can, and then taking a 10K. They want Dr. BSMR. Where I'm just doing these intervals, and as I'm running, I'm just going, God, I hate this, God, I hate this, God, I hate this, God, I hate this, God, I hate this.
Yep.
Why with every step? But afterwards, because blood flow does not stop at my neck, I'm thinking more clearly. I do sleep better, which helps me think more clearly. And I find myself, aside from the fact that it keeps my heart healthier and doing all sorts of good things for my body, but I hate the process of doing it so much.
Yeah, I can feel you. And I mean, for those of you who have, and my asthma's not the worst, but I feel like as I get older and just being back in the United States as well, I feel like the asthma has just gotten worse. For those of you who have asthma, for example, obviously maybe cardio's not the, Dr. B, maybe
always keep my inhaler just in case.
Yeah, maybe cardio's not necessarily the best for you, depending on how severe everything is. But if you decide to do running or anything, definitely keep your inhaler on you. Choose a place that's not going to trigger your asthma. I have been trying to walk more often, and I live in a small town that has like a big a major state highway going through it, so not like super duper like big, but still big enough that there are a bunch of like semi trucks that come through here on a daily basis. I cannot walk that main road. I can't. It tears me apart. So that's another kind of form of self-care for your self-care, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, and that you're bringing up a really good point. Is that, again, self-care is not always glamorous. And if you have limiting factors, whether it's physical, whether it's a mental health thing, whether it's anything like that, first of all, going to the physician, going to a psychiatrist, going to see a therapist, that is all self-care too. And by the way, you should do all that before you should do any of the appropriate stuff before you institute any sort of physical and or mental health regimen.
Yeah. I have been talking with my therapist recently about basically a wellness plan. It's very nice.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that I made where I made it as part of like a work thing where they had us gave us a training on wellness and resilience. Because for me as the manager, I don't do the difficult cases, but sometimes our agents are looking at legal issues, and they can get very, very concerning sometimes. So so we had a training like that, and as part of that, I made a wellness plan, and I remember super doubting it, going, I don't think this is correct. I think that I went to my I went to my therapist, and he said, oh no, I think it's great. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm glad that I'm just putting stuff on there that is good.
Yeah, and it's there's something else that brings up for me that I think is worth mentioning, because self-care is I kind of hinted at this when we started talking, but self-care is one of those terms that has just become a buzzword in so many respects.
Yeah.
And there are many companies, not all, but many companies that, whether intentionally or unintentionally, are using self-care and self-care tips as a way of not changing toxic systemic practices. And and that is something that I want everybody to think about. Self-care is not a solution for systemic stressors.
Yeah.
And just because you can't engage in quote unquote good enough self-care does not mean it's necessarily your fault.
Right.
Because there are a lot of people in this world who exist in truly oppressive systems, and them not being able to get ahead of those stressors, that's not a mark against them. So that's something to bear in mind, is that self-care is not a solution for systemic problems.
Yeah. I think that's a really hard, like mentioning, like you did, that there are places that use that as a kind of excuse for, those bad practices.
Yeah.
So we have another question here in chat.
Oh, we also made the goal. Oh my goodness.
We did. Sorry, I was looking at chat and not.
Oh my goodness.
Very nice, very nice. Please put back your tiara.
Done.
Perfect. I mean, you look so glorious in it. It really does look nice on you. So the question is there space for small groups of people to help each other with practice self-care? And I feel like, as a yes or no question, absolutely. But I think there's more to it than just that. And our wonderful Dr. B here is qualified to tell you a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, any group or any group can be supportive of individual self-care practices, provided they're a supportive group. And I've already seen in the chat that somebody's saying breaking away from people who pull you back, pull you down. That is a form of self-care too, insofar as you have control over your environment, and not, none of us have complete control of our environment. But in ways that you can, positioning your environment to be supportive of your goals, that can be a form of self-care. Now, of course, you can take that too far, and it can be you can position your environment in such a way that unquestionably supports you, and then you get into things like groupthink. But if your goal is to just be a quality better person, and maybe one of the things you do is set up your environment in such a way that you have people who are going to tell you, no, that's a bad idea.
Are you talking about the Valkyries? No, I say that kind of as a joke, but I'm also 100% serious. And I think probably everybody here knows that Speedrun Ragnarok was a little, not delayed necessarily, but a little procrastinated this year. And it came down to kind of the wire where all of us were kind of chasing each other going, hey, Natara, how long have you been? Actually, Natara, I never had to chase Natara, but Natara was always chasing us. But, Natara chasing us going, how long have you been working? We've been working for 8 hours. You need to stop.
I'd be like, no, stop. I don't care what you have left to do. You are going to bed. It can wait till tomorrow. If it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done.
Yep.
Hopefully they could hear Natara on camera.
I actually unmuted myself. I'm no longer Ghost Tara. I'm real voice Tara. Yeah.
So, but I wanna, also remind all of you that this is like, it really depends on your relationship with that group as well. Right,
yeah.
Because if you are in a group of kind of newish people, or people who you're pretty close to, but you're not that close to, and you're like, hey, yeah, that's a great idea, and then you start chasing each other like that, it can backfire, and it can turn into something that is, can be more toxic for you. And like Dr. B was saying, groupthink and stuff. So making sure that, you are in like a correct environment, that all of you have, your own lines, your own personal like space, that you don't lose that. And that, even if Natara is over here like, okay, no, you've been working for 8 hours. And I say, no, Natara, it's almost finished. I literally only need 15 more minutes. I know you say that. Let me finish this and I'll be done for the day.
So you can't rest if your brain is panicking and going, no, I have to finish. I have to. Yep. I get that.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's an important thing to consider in working with people. And I don't know if anybody in the chat watches the YouTube channel How to ADHD.
Such a great channel.
Well, so Jess and I have known each other for a very, very long time, and we lived together for a year, and we still work together and see each other daily. In fact, the studio's upstairs. And we were having a conversation about this recently, that she and I can talk to each other in a way about work projects that other people can't. And that's simply because there is such a developed level of trust between us that even if we're disagreeing on an individual thing, we trust that the other person has the long-term project in mind and wants the other person to be successful. And so surrounding yourself with people who you trust enough to tell you no, while still believing they have your best interest at heart and demonstrate actively that they have your best interests in mind and support you, that is a really important thing for me anyway, in picking friends. In fact, it's something I look for, a group of people who support me and my goals and are also willing to tell me no if they see me falling short of those goals.
Dr. B, I'm sorry. How long have you been spying on Natara in my chat, and how did you get access to that? I just needed to know.
I don't. Okay, here's the deal.
Okay,
I tell people I'm not. I tell people I'm not psychic, but truly I'm telepathic. It's just it's a thing.
Okay. All right, I got it. But it's telepathic because you're not pathetic.
Oh God, that's why I get laughed at the psychic conventions.
Yeah, honestly, and I feel like I have that relationship really with like all of the Valkyries, where especially with everything that we're doing, and we really look out for each other in a way that it is just that. It is a trust relationship. It's a friendship that's really, really deep, and it comes from experience and everything. So I really, kind of vibe with that feeling, so to say. But speaking of, trust relationships and how to support each other, I got a question, another one from the Japanese Restream community, and this is a little more specific to work and might be a little bit difficult to answer in the realm of self-care. But the question is, I want to help my colleagues to have the courage to tell the senior workers and the bosses and management that they dislike something. And how is the best way that I can help them? And I want to say, first of all, I've been working on this really, really a lot recently, because I take a lot of problems and I will take them to heart. Circle of influence, circle of control, circle of concern. There we go. You can't fix everything. Obviously, we can all give each other great advice, but you can't control that. And making sure that you are not trying to personally solve someone else's problem is going to help you a lot in the long run. That being said, in the kind of place of work, how can we help support our colleagues in a way that kind of helps them or helps ourselves facilitate better self-care at work?
Well, one of the things I want to be really clear about, this is a complicated issue. And one of the reasons it becomes more complicated is that appropriate workplace behavior in, let's say, the Western United States is not necessarily the same appropriate workplace in Southern Japan or Northern Japan or in, in Poland or wherever, because the
あ、
workplace and
チャット欄
cultural
の方で
norms
貝白
are
さん
going
が
to be
質問の
very different. And if
方を
I,
書いてくださ
if
って
I
ますね。
talk to, if I talk to my boss here on the West Coast of the United States in Seattle, and I take the same very forthright approach that I take with her, and I'm talking to somebody in, gosh, what's a good example? Well, let's just say, bring this up. Let's say Japan.
Yeah.
My directness and my forthrightness is probably not going to be met with the same level of appreciation.
Yeah.
And so that's a very difficult question for me to answer with any level of authority, because
Of course, yeah.
that assumes I know all of the ins and outs and subtleties of a Japanese corporate environment. Now, that being said, what's that?
Yo-Yo just decided she was sleeping, and then she just like went crazy and jumped off my lap. Bye.
Cat.
Sorry.
Kitty.
Continue. Kitty.
But what I'm gonna lean back on is the idea of, I'm sure there are experts not only in psychology, but the local culture and corporate culture. See, I combined all of that into culture. Which that's a fun little.
That's a nice word, actually.
Yeah, culture.
Culture.
The pain you feel by working in a corporate environment. Culture. I don't know. At this point, I'm completely making things up. Or couture. Maybe we're combining high fashion with corporate workplace environments. It's culture. No?
I'm thinking about that. I'm sorry. I was thinking about that exact combination with the kindergarten I worked in Japan, and nah.
Fancy fashion, corporate environment. Culture.
Culture.
But I'm sure that every region is going to have experts that combine not only mental wellness practices or physical or emotional wellness practices in a culturally appropriate way, with knowledge of various local practices. And so I'm going to once again go back to refer to somebody in your area who is authorized to provide that sort of advice and treatment.
Yeah. And kind of falling back on the, right, I was mentioning the circle of influence and circle of concern, and like, you can't solve everybody's problems. Sometimes it comes to a point where then this probably is, international. It comes to a point where you ask yourself, is this and this culture of my job damaging to me? In which case, what are my options? And, should I leave? What's out there? What else is out there for me potentially? It really, it's a kind of unique situation, but considering what you can actually actively do yourself if it's damaging you, for example.
And one of the things I want to push back on just a little bit is this idea that I once made the mistake of asking a question like that to somebody who came from an incredibly communal culture, like a communal culture that expressed cohesion in a way that was so intense I couldn't even fathom it coming from America and the West Coast of America, where America is by some measures the most individualistic nation in the world, and this person came from a culture that was to such a degree that the concept of I was a little iffy, that because other people's problems were a communal problem.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the reason that I'm hesitant to provide any sort of blanket statement, because what's culturally appropriate for me in Seattle is very different depending on the level of homogeneity and cohesiveness that exists within a different culture.
Hold on, I gotta say that. So yeah, it can be difficult to not consider someone else's problems, not your own. There we go. Yeah, no, and that makes it. This is why you're the professional, and I'm just a call center manager.
Yes, kids, you too can make life mistakes and go to grad school.
Dr. B. No, really. Do you consider going to grad school a mistake?
Depends on when you ask me.
Okay. Right now.
I was, it was funny. I was at the time I was finishing. I was engaged at the time I was finishing grad school, and we're no longer married. But we were. It was not a good fit. But one of the jokes I used to say, because she got into a career that did not require higher education, and she had launched her career by age 26. And was at that point making more money than I ever will.
Fair.
And there I was borrowing a house on my career. And because I was like, I want to make a difference in the world. And I do.
Yeah, you do.
But I will never be rich doing it. And when people were like, you got your doctorate? You must be smart. I'm like, no, I'm educated. She's smart. There's a difference.
Yeah. Dr. B, I browsed past this question and I'm remembering it now. Touch on it because I feel like this is actually something in your expertise. It wasn't necessarily related to self-care, but more about, and if you know who you are, please post the question again so I can give the exact verbiage. But it was about how can you find someone to diagnose or do the tests? What's the best way? There we go. What's the best way to find someone to do the diagnoses and tests for autism in adults in the United States?
Okay, that's tricky. And that is tricky because there's a lot of people in the United States, depending on your region, that can give a diagnosis, but it's also a question of who's going to give a good diagnosis. Because my experience, and this is anecdotal, but my experience is most medical providers and most behavioral health providers are not really familiar with how adult autism works. And especially, and this is really important for me to say, especially on this stream, most of the research that I know of is based on people who look like me. So cisgender dudes. And so when you throw in any degree of gender diversity outside of that incredibly narrow scope, a lot of mental health providers and behavioral health providers and medical providers don't necessarily understand the way autism manifests in adults. Now, there are some really cool resources for getting more education on that. One of them is called the Awake Project, and that's run by a former professor of mine who is incredibly thorough in the research that she does. But when I looked for my diagnosis, I very specifically looked for a assessment providing psychologist who specialized in adult autism. So that's what I looked for. Actually, in my case, it was even more complicated because I not only had to find somebody who did that, I had to find somebody who was so good at providing those diagnoses and those tests that they could work around the fact that I know all the common tests. So,
tough. That's rough. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first session I had with this person was us just sitting down and him just going, all right, what tests can't I give you? And I'm like, all right, so this whole series can't give me that one. This whole series can't give me that one. Any of them, because I was trained on all of those.
What we don't know is that there's actually now what they call the Dr. B tests that they give to, that they made special that they don't give to the other psychologists.
I was really impressed with his flexibility in being able to work around the fact that I know a good chunk of the tests. He was pretty successful. He was pretty successful in doing that. There was one I knew that he gave me. There was one I knew, and I was like, "You're giving me this one. I know this test." And he's like, "I can't tell you that, man. You know I can't tell you that." But yeah, I would specifically search for a psychologist or a neuropsychologist who can provide an adult autism specific assessment of that. It's tricky. It's probably going to take a while. Assessments like that are so expensive.
Yeah.
So expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably not covered by most insurances either.
Some do. Some do. Mine was. And that's part of the reason. I will say, look around. Look around for those sort of things, and check with your health insurance if you have health insurance. One of the ways that you can potentially get these assessments done, if money is a concern, and like it is for most people, certainly still is for me. Is teaching universities. If you have access to a university that does training for grad students, and this is what I did in grad school to get therapy on the regular, was I went to a different school who had a clinic, and they gave me sliding scale therapy. They did a sliding scale assessment for me. And the trade-off is I've got a third-year grad student who's doing it, so it was like me, and they're getting their experience, but they were supervised by a licensed psychologist, and so that was one of the ways I did that back before I really had insurance.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So I really can't remember who asked that question, or if they're still here. Hopefully they come back and watch the VOD if they didn't, if they had to leave. But thank you for that question, because I know that it can be difficult if you feel like you might be on the spectrum of autism, or if you've been told by maybe like a counselor or something, yeah, you might be autistic. And they're suggesting that you get, those kinds of tests done as an adult. It can definitely be hard to find those resources. So thank you, Dr. B.
What I can.
So here's a toughie, but probably a goodie. And maybe also tough to answer because it's kind of specific. So when it comes to helping out friends and providing a shoulder for them, so to speak, is there any sign that that behavior from you is becoming bad for them, and that they're leaning too much on you and using you as a crutch?
A lot of times, I mean, are you asked? That's an interesting thing, because if I think about the dynamic, suddenly I'm putting myself in even more of a caretaking role for my friends. I'm not only there. If I'm asking that question about my friend, I'm not only providing them space, but I'm also now responsible for their limits.
Right.
And that's something I think about. If I'm refusing something on behalf of my friend, that's a bold move.
Yeah.
Because now I'm making myself responsible for their limits. If the question is more, do you know that them leaning on you, yeah, if them leaning on me is bad for them, I have a hard time judging that, because the results of my actions on their life are, at least from within my friendships, kind of up to them to determine.
Yeah.
Is it bad for me? Different question. if them leaning on me is having deleterious effects on my life, then that is a very different question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I guess too, like, do you want to be their caretaker, or is the exchange mutual? Where like Natara will come to me, sometimes I'll come to Natara. Where we have this mutual exchange where there's like, it doesn't feel like I'm, that one is solely supporting the other, but we are we are balanced, so to speak.
Plus, Kay gives me cookies, so added bonus.
Well, there's also
they weren't really cookies. Just don't tell. They weren't really cookies, but don't tell Natara.
What?
Right.
Oh no, she heard me.
There's the promise of cookies.
Cookies? Do you want cookies, Dr. B?
What if I ever say I don't want cookies, I am an imposter.
Now we know what to ask Dr. B when we play Among Us.
Do I want cookies? Of course I want cookies. Unless they have raisins, which are the chaotic evil cookies. All right? They are just in there masquerade. If they if they declare themselves raisins, fine. Okay? If they're out and they're like, hey, I'm a raisin. This is an oatmeal raisin cookie. That's cool. Great. I know what
you're talking about.
But how many times have you consumed a chocolate chip cookie that you thought was a chocolate chip cookie only to find its raisins in there? That is evil.
Yep.
I agree. That's the worst betrayal ever.
Yes.
Yes. Now I'm kind of. Now I want to send cookies to the. I don't know. Do all of the clinicians work at the Take This office, or do you all work at like different places?
Well, we're a remote team, and to be clear, I am not a clinician at this point.
Fair. You're
just
the clinician director.
I was clinically trained, and I was a clinician. And then I started doing work at Take This, doing all policy and education, and I don't practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I will probably start practicing here in the near future once I am fully licensed to do so.
The clinicians and clinician to be.
Yeah, or just the psych staff, the psychology staff.
The staff. Yeah. Dude, so all of the Take This staff, how many of you, does Take This have an office?
No, we don't. It's part of it's actually interesting. In the course of the last year, last year and a half when people started working remotely and everybody started stressing out about it, we were like, oh, wow, we've been doing this for 5 years. Let us help you.
Yeah.
Let's teach you some tricks because we're old hat at this.
So if I send Eve cookies, she's not going to share.
No, Eve would, because Eve is Eve is a gloriously wonderful and kind person.
Eve is the paladin, basically, the lawful good one.
You know what? I think Eve isn't rigid enough to be a paladin. Eve is just kind.
Okay.
Eve is like a ranger. Because she is just all sorts of in touch with nature and is kind and wonderful and generous and very much about the communal aspects of things.
And I hope she comes back into this stream and hears what I said. But Eve actually took the initiative to reach out to us this year because we were so super behind that some things fell through the cracks, and asked if if we needed anything and do we want prizes. I'm like, yeah, we want prizes. She sent me
Okay, hold on. Because so Take This as warehouse is my storage unit. All right. And so when I went to get those prizes out of my storage unit, I didn't play Destiny a year ago. I do now. And when I found out what we were giving to you all, I sent a message to the Take This Slack just saying, I deserve cookies for not stealing any of this.
What kind of cookies?
All of them.
What's your favorite?
All of them.
Duly noted.
All right, cool. We're gonna get you a cookie array.
It is so the prizes that y'all are getting are so cool.
Yeah, I mean, Eve sent me the thing, and there were a lot more, and we were just like, ooh. But I was just like, oh yeah, we could. Eve was like, "You can take them out." I was like, "I'm sure we could, but is that okay?" But also, like, let's just choose these things. So basically, we asked for like all of the hope shields. There's a really. Do you happen to have that signed one like laying around?
Which signed one?
The autographed hope shield.
So the ones that take this staff autographed?
I don't know. It said it was autographed. Hold on.
Yeah, there were a couple that all of the Seattle-based Take This staff autographed, and no, those are actually with I got them and gave them to our operations director.
Fair.
Yeah,
All right.
so I don't have
Eve's
any of them in front of me, but I do have a hope shield within reach. If people want to see what some of them look like.
They're so beautiful.
So, these hope shields are something that are made by our friends at Wormwood Gaming. And we've had a partnership with them for a very long time, 5 years now. And they are you don't know which one you're going to get. And it's in 90 different woods. And they're just the perfect size to keep in your pocket.
Yeah.
I think this one is cherry wood.
I have one downstairs, and
it's cherry.
I wish I had brought it up. Mine, I took it out of the box and I just keep it like around so I can like hold it. But it's like one of those things that you can also use as like a worry stone.
Yes,
so.
And that's very specifically the reason we have the series numbers etched onto the back, so there's a texture to them.
Mine doesn't have that.
Then you got one of the earliest ones. Yeah, you got one of the very, very earliest ones. And what's really cool about these, in addition to, everything, is that 1 in 50 of them, if you order them from Wormwood Gaming, 1 in 50 of them will be a legendary shield in Macassar ebony with a special inlay.
Yep. And those, that's the one that we have as like our little picture there on our prize sheet.
Wait, you've got a Macassar? You've got an ebony one?
No, it's just the picture off of the Wormwood site. Yeah, I was hoping, but yeah.
So I have 2 of the ebony ones upstairs because I have purchased so many of these things.
Yeah, I've been starting to think. I was like, I want like a small collection of these, but also it's like, yeah, you're just like, they're not that expensive, but also if you're trying to get like specific ones, then it gets expensive. So I think they're $25.
$20, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, they're great.
Yeah, they are really beautiful, and basically everything Wormwood makes is beautiful. Cat, stop it.
I will actually. I'm going to brag for just a moment on that. You know the Wormwood gaming tables?
I'm going to hang up this call. Continue.
Yeah, I'm on the list. I mean, obviously I had to pay for it, but...
Oh. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, here, we have another autism question for you. In what ways does a diagnosis help for autism? I've heard that it doesn't really do much since we just have different processes to holistic folks, and that a diagnosis can even be harmful professionally or with other medical professions.
Okay, so I said this the other day when I was here, I think 2 days ago. Having 1 foot in the autism community and 1 foot in the clinical world, I realize I see things a little bit differently than a lot of folks. But I see diagnostic labels as useful for what they're useful for. In the same way, I see a claw hammer as useful for what a claw hammer is useful for. Now, when you start either weaponizing those things and or applying them outside of the realm that they're good for, that's when we start running into problems. And I will say personally, for me, knowing that my experiences were common enough that knowing that my experiences were shared by enough people that there was a label for it was incredibly validating to me.
Yeah.
That I wasn't just imagining my difficulties, that I was in fact struggling pretty badly. That was incredibly validating for me. And it also gave me a lens through which to not only view my current processes, but all of my past interactions. And I still have, even though I was diagnosed at 35, I still have moments where I think back on my past and just kind of go, oh, ooh, yeah, that was an autism thing. Huh. And so getting that diagnosis really gave me that framework in which to start understanding what was my brain just being a different operating system. And this is a metaphor I use all the time, that I'm a Linux in a Windows world.
Mm-hmm.
And once I understood that, then I slowly started to refrain from trying to make my brain be a Windows computer when I'm a Linux. And I started to reframe those questions of, okay, instead of trying to be different on a fundamental level, how do I interface differently in a way that's mutually beneficial? And that changed the way I interacted with people. And it also gave me a bit of a roadmap for the future. It didn't just help me understand my past, it also gave me a bit of an understanding for how I might be, or how I might develop, or how I might end up in the future. And so in that respect, I still consider that diagnostic label incredibly validating and incredibly helpful and incredibly useful. It also gave a lot of the people in my community and in my family and in my world a sort of framework to hang things on. Like if I'm acting differently than they expect, it's not that I'm being, deliberately oppositional or anything like that. It's that I have a different view of the world. My brain literally processes things differently. And that helped them to be more understanding of those differences as well. So I consider that label in many respects liberating. Now, to address this, what I think is the second part of that question is, can it be harmful when used by professionals in certain respects? I would say in my world, it depends on how it's being used. And the how of things is generally the more important thing to me. Like, am I encountering a medical professional who's saying, oh, okay, you're autistic, and here's what I know about, the autism experience. Does that jive with your reality?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very different experience than someone saying, you have autism, you can't make your own decisions, I'm going to do it for you. It might be the same professional, but how they go about things with that diagnostic label is going to be very different. Yeah. And the how is important.
So I feel like, obviously, you can only speak, through your own experience, but how might someone who is not in the same position as you are deal with having that diagnosis professionally? Like, is there a good way to say, hey boss, I'm autistic?
Oh, how are you asking? How do you reveal that to a in a workplace setting?
Yeah, or like how would you deal with like any changes that apparently needs to be made, or
requesting like accommodations and so forth?
Mm-hmm.
That can be a tricky thing depending on your workplace, because some workplaces are ridiculously supportive, and I'm very fortunate that I'm glad that Take This walks the walk internally, because we would just be a load of hypocrites if we weren't understanding of people's mental health needs internally. When instead, I gotta give shout out to my boss, Eve Crevichet. She is amazing at walking the walk and making sure we all do it. Mm-hmm. And so for me, revealing my diagnosis to everybody, that wasn't that big of a deal for us, and for a variety of reasons. One is I'm in I'm one of the directors, so I have a structural place of privilege. I'm also clinically trained, so that gives me an authority there. So it's very different for someone with.
It was just like another morning coffee talk.
No, I mean it did have serious implications because I was also figuring things out as I went. There are still things that I'm figuring out now, kind of going, oh yeah, that's why my brain does that.
I see.
But that's an ongoing debate that a lot of my friends and I have privately had of how do you begin those conversations, and can you safely do that in an environment where they don't support people? Well, legally in the United States, they're supposed to. If you have a diagnosis officially given to you by a licensed provider, then corporate places of employment are legally required to give you reasonable accommodations. And there's actually a really cool website that I only discovered about a year ago, and I forget who told me about it. I wish I could give them credit, but I can't remember who told me about it. It's called AskJan.org, and that's the Job Accommodation Network. And they not only list potential accommodations by diagnosis, they list potential accommodations by specific workplace challenges. Mm-hmm. And so in case you've got a really cool boss who's like, I don't need you to have an official diagnosis for me to try and meet your needs. Let's see what you're struggling with, and let's try and scaffold that in.
Yeah. I believe that without Natar coming in, we're pretty much out of time, but I wanted to pick this up really quick before we left, and this is less mental health but more physical. Richard mentioning that you have medically diagnosed stupid fingers, motor dysgraphia.
Motor dysgraphia. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I always wonder how much accommodation I deserve. All of the accommodation that you need. If you're asking someone who's basically a manager, that's my profession now. I manage people, and you deserve what you need. Is that what you're getting? Right, I don't know, but
Yep. In the United States, for medical and mental health disabilities, all employers, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, are required to provide reasonable accommodations. Now, that definition of reasonable varies from practice to practice and employment situation to employment situation. But if you have something that's been officially diagnosed, you are legally required to receive some sort of accommodation for it. And a quick and easy thought process on that is, if I'm short, which I'm not, I bang my head a lot. If I'm short and I'm required to reach the top shelf frequently, and they should buy me a step stool. It's that simple, and it's same thing for emotional and cognitive needs.
Yeah, and it's also like, for example, if you have that, and like I said, I work in a call center, but we work primarily with emails. So if your job is to write emails and you you can't meet the the necessities for that job, then right, it's either, is there another position open that you can fill, or we'll let you stay here until you find a new job. But
or can they pay $60 and get you speech to text?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So all of the accommodations you need. Yeah. Mild disability, it feels wrong to claim you are disabled. But your fingers your fingers are disabled. Maybe your brain and other physical parts of you aren't.
All right,
but it's okay.
Hold on.
Okay, I'm going to shut up.
Okay, hold on. Let's talk about that. First of all, disabled is not a dirty word. All right, and a lot of us, and I struggle with this periodically myself, because of internalized ableism. We are hesitant to do that. But again, I go back to this metaphor of being short when you have to reach the top shelf. No, I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to say that being short is bad. But if there's something you could do with a little bit of assistance, and you want to be able to do that, and you just need a little bit of assistance, that's all we're talking about here, is getting assistance to do the thing you're otherwise capable of doing. For me, I need to have an external structure created, and I can do high-level work. Disabled does not mean completely incapable. It means that it means a lot of things depending on which model you're looking at, but it's not a dirty word.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of those things that comes back to our last talk about mental health and destigmatizing it. And it's not only just mental health, right? Because we, accepting that it's okay to be disabled, just like it's okay not to be okay.
Right.
So, and it's not something that you need to feel bad about. Exactly like if you had, I love that metaphor of being short, right? Like it's great because nobody, unless you are medically diagnosed to be, what's the proper, is midget okay? I don't know if that's an okay word.
Typically no.
Okay. It is not.
Okay, I don't know what's it called. What's a proper word? Teach me.
That is not my community. I am unfamiliar.
Dwarfism, perhaps. Anyway, if you are medically diagnosed to be extremely short, right, then it's still not like it's not something that's wrong with you. It is who you are, and that's okay. So. Yes.
Yeah, it is not having a disability is not a moral failure, and I think there's a lot of us who struggle with that because of long-standing messages of internalized ableism. I still struggle with that from time to time.
Yeah, vertically challenged.
I'm gonna have to look that up later.
A problem with short folks here. I'm just saying, as the resident shorty.
Natara is only a little bit shorter than me, to be completely fair. Yeah. Little person, I'll ask around and actually get a nice word from people.
I'm not knowing the answer to that question. Yeah. I'm going to be looking it up and educating myself later as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just like, what's correct here? And yeah, kind of pulling back. We need to wrap up, but the pulling back to the destigmatization as well, questioning yourself when you use a word and you go, wait a second, is this okay? Then actively asking people. Like, I feel a little embarrassed to ask it live on stream with everybody watching, but it also helps me keep myself, take ownership of, the language I'm using. So, yeah. All right. Well, there are so many things, and we can talk about so much more, and this topic will never end. So hopefully we get Dr. B or someone back next year. I know
we're going to be around. Y'all are amazing and have been so supportive of all of us, and we're going to do what we can to support you in that effort.
Thank you. We love it. And just to be clear, we love supporting Take This because you all do walk the walk, and it's you teach but also embody the change you want to be. You are our role models, and we really, really love that in all of you. So we are Dr. B at $9,500.
$9,500.
We are literally. Wait, Dr. B, how much does an AFK room cost again?
A full-scale in-person AFK room is about $10,000 to run.
Gee. Yeah. So we are literally $500 away from that that AFK room goal. Like Dr. B said, most things are happening online right now. So full-scale AFK rooms sadly aren't happening, but there are lots of other resources. But
one might be happening soonish. That's all I can say.
So keep your eyes on that. Take This Twitter and blog. But thank you so much, Dr. B. We cannot, we really can't get enough of you. I don't want to end this thing. Natara's gonna like come over and like pull me off my chair and shut my computer off. But
I know where you live.
You do know where I live. It's kind of far away from you, but Natara does know where I live. So we are sadly going to let you go. But we hope that should you have the time to do so, that you'll hang out either today or tomorrow, and and we will look forward to having another panel with you again next year.
Yep. Thank you so much. I'll be popping in the next 24 hours. But I'm actually, speaking of self-care, I'm going to go on a run after this.
Do it. Yep. Nice. Awesome. All right, everybody. And we'll end this here. Next up is, what's next up again, Leggy? What are we doing?
Coming up next, we have Link: The Faces of Evil.
Nice. All right. So everybody stay tuned for that, and thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.